Hey everyone, welcome to Neighbor Science, the only podcast about political economy and anime. I am Ryan Salisbury, and today we have from Kino Lefter, Abdul.
Hello. I'm very happy to be on Neighbor Science, by the way. You guys absolutely rule. And this is
Thanks, man.
like a very medium stakes dream come true for me. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. And we also have Cheech, aka Adam.
Big reveal right here on Neighbor Science. You heard it first. Breaking news. I'm from Twitter.
So today we are doing the fourth episode. I should have looked this up before I started, but I think it's the fourth Mecha Madness episode. We're talking about one of my favorite shows, Gunbuster, and also Diebuster. Not quite his favorite Diebuster, but Gunbuster, very good. So, Cheech, I think did you watch both?
Yes, I watched them all the way through in 2 nights, and I loved every second of it.
Nice. And Abdul, you watched just Gunbuster?
Yeah, I've succumbed to wage slavery in a big way, so it's been mostly I watched Gunbuster in like 2 days, and I watched like a highlight reel of anime music videos for Diebuster and stuff
Nice.
like that, just to try and get a sense of what it was. But it left me more confused afterwards than if I hadn't watched it at all, I think.
Yeah, well, it is a very confusing OVA, I think. I definitely had to watch it twice to really know what was going on at all. I mean, part of that was my fault because I was only half paying attention. I was doing the typical, put on an anime and then try and post at the same time, even though it's subtitles.
Oh, that's impossible.
Yeah. Weebs these days always on their phones.
Yeah.
Not paying enough attention to the subtitles.
I'm convinced that I'll eventually learn Japanese by just listening to the audio and not reading the subtitles. So far, it's sort of working. I know some Japanese now, but it'll take a long time to get there. I definitely still need to watch what's happening.
I can't ask where a hospital is, but I can say Shining Hick Force or something.
I can at least say help.
It's I spent some time in Japan, just traveling there for vacation, visiting friends who are teaching there and stuff like that. And whenever a word comes up in an anime that I understand, I get so excited. I turn to my partner, I'm like, I know what that one meant, because I refused to go to I went to Japan, refused to learn any of the language for a month and change. Big mistake, by the way. Don't do that. Anyone who
Great
says
bit that Americans do.
Yeah.
So Gunbuster is a 6-episode OVA from 1988, and it was Hideaki Anno, who is the director of Evangelion. It was his directorial debut. The series was inspired by Top Gun and follows the story of Noriko Takaya trying to follow in her father's footsteps as a space pilot and becoming the savior of humanity. And Diebuster was made in 2004 to commemorate Gainax's 20th anniversary. So it's a Gainax series. It has a early version of the Gainax ending, I would say. Just crazy stuff happening. Also, I think the last episode is very similar to what happened with the last episode of Evangelion, in that it appears that they ran out of budget and they compensated for it by doing a weird artsy episode. But anyway, let's start with episode 1. So we start off with a very 80s movie feel, right? It's very distinctly 80s cocaine music. There's workout montages, aerobics clothes, guys with aviators. And I think the very first thing they show after the prologue is a really funny joke. It's a bunch of giant robots jogging and doing sit-ups, push-ups, and human pyramids and jumping rope.
I had to pause it because I could not stop laughing at that. The human pyramid of the fucking robots. It was so... oh my god.
It's a great way to get you into the show, because from that moment on, I don't think I looked at my phone once when I was watching it, because I'm I have to see how this plays out. And I also didn't realize upon watching it, I think you even told me when we were talking about the show, this was Hideaki Anno's first first series, but it didn't click until much later on. I was like, hey, this feels a lot like Eva. And then, halfway through I looked it up. I'm like, oh shit, no, that makes a whole lot of sense. But yeah, that scene is spectacular. That is, it's great.
So Noriko is the main character. She's kind of a dunce. She's a really good athlete, but has no aptitude for operating giant robots. And unfortunately, in the society she lives in, your social status is entirely determined by your ability to operate a giant robot. So she gets bullied for it. Yeah. Yeah. And there's also Kazumi Amano. And she's like the star of the class, the idol. She's really good at piloting giant robots, and so Kazumi gives Noriko the advice that she needs to like really work hard at it. Like, she was bad at piloting giant robots too at first, and then she trained really hard and got good at it, which is good advice. There was also this weird thing where like their encounter was like predicted by a horoscope. I don't know if there's any meaning to that.
The horoscope thing through the whole show is just odd. Didn't they bring that back in Die-Buster too with the twins?
I don't remember that, but you're probably right.
Yeah, the weird like Virgo theme going on throughout it. Like, I mean, one of the things I noticed especially about this episode is like it was really ahead of its time in terms of a lot of things. Like, I don't know if you got Starship Troopers vibe from the way he sets up the world and the society, and it's spectacular, but also predicted this wonderful like millennial trope of knowing that astrology is 100% real and infallible. Like, she definitely had a co-star on her on her mech.
I don't know enough about astrology to pick up any of the like references that they make to it, so this is honestly the only thing that I really noticed about it, and like everything else obviously just flew over my head completely.
Okay, the co-star heads. It's like the most popular astrology app. They will all know what I'm talking about. Some of them may even chuckle. All four of them.
All the Warren supporters.
Yeah. So like basically what happens in the episode is Noriko gets bullied and she gets the advice from Kazumi, and Coach tries to help her in his like abusive piece of shit way, and like Kazumi kind of comes to goes to Coach and like tries to talk him down from picking her as the candidate to go into space because she has no aptitude and she's afraid that she's gonna get killed. So like she'll tell her like, oh, you need to work hard, but she doesn't really believe in her enough to think that she can actually do it. Which I thought was an interesting way to set up the characters, who like later become very close friends. Was there anything else you guys had to say about this episode?
Well, that was like
Oh no, you go ahead.
Well, that was like a reoccurring theme with Noriko and Kazumi. Kazumi just like being nice up front and then like not trusting in Noriko at all, and breaking the partnership and all that.
I think like it sets up a lot of really cool things that are capitalized on later on. You know what I mean? Like especially closer to the end of the series with Kazumi. In general, like the world building in this episode, I just again I have to take it on for like a second here. It is spectacular. Like the way it tells you sort of everything you need to know very quickly, the way it I like the stuff with the mechs and the training montages and all that stuff, the way it sets up the high school, even like the the ephemeris villainous insectoid race. I'm really happy you don't really see them in the first episode or for a while. Like it holds the delay extremely long.
Yeah, they wait until like episode 3.
Yeah. And even
it
episode 3,
tension,
like you barely see them. It's just the corpse, right?
Yeah, you see a corpse a little bit, and then when they actually like get in a fight, all you see is like darkness, which is I think was a really great way to build tension.
It's also like I think it's a very like Hideaki Anno opening where it's showing you one world, but it's also not showing you how like weird and sort of dramatic it's going to get. Like this is so lighthearted compared to where the show ends up going and what it starts talking about.
Yeah, everything looks like California, you know?
Yeah.
There's like palm trees and, you know, it's just sunny and like golden all the time. I'm assuming that's what California's like.
Half expecting a vaporwave soundtrack.
Yeah, like, you know, the Miami Nights, you know, and they almost get there with like the red and gold as the show goes on, like the, you know, that great like Japanese like 80s neon.
Yeah.
And that soundtrack too. That intro song is one of the greatest anime intro
rules.
songs ever. It's
Yep.
so 80s.
Love it.
And also just like it's a good precursor to how horny Makoto I was about to say Makoto Shinkai, fuck. How horny Hideaki Anno gets. You know what I mean? Like, is this the first instance of the Gynax bounce? Probably. Is this
There are definitely articles about that.
Yeah. Oh, are there? Yeah.
Yes.
He's just incredible. He's unbelievably horny, and this show, like, you know, it might be his horniest one. I don't know. Eva gets close. I haven't seen a lot of the other stuff he's done, but yeah, even just that opening, just, you know, everyone walking around, the outfits, all that stuff. It's like, oh, this is like a good roadmap for where he's going to go as a creator and as an artist.
Okay, so episode 2, you know, they actually get into space, right? They do have a mission in this. They introduce the time dilation stuff, which is like one of my favorite aspects of the series. I think the ship designs in this are like very inspired by 2001 and Star Wars. Like the space station looks like something out of 2001, and the Excellion from the bottom looks exactly like a Star Destroyer to me. Once you actually see its full body, it looks different. But man, from the bottom, it was like, wow, this is like a Star Wars shot.
It felt like a ripoff at first before you see the top. Like when they're going towards it, I like had to double take. I'm like, is that a Star Destroyer? Like, did they just run out of ideas? But no, the designs improve. I also think as the series goes on, like the designs of the ship and the way they present space travel and stuff is fleshed out like so well as they sort of go through it.
Yeah.
Like the cool like hyper jumping and stuff like that.
Yes, that was great.
The actual times they're in subspace is really cool too. Like the way they, you know, had it all shimmery. It kind of reminded me of what was that, Spaceballs? All the lights.
Oh, and one of the other crazy things about this show, because it's from the 80s, the Soviet Union still existed, so there's Soviet Mecha.
Those were amazing. Just and also calling the character Young Freud,
yes,
is absolutely ridiculous. Like I love it. You know, it's just again, it's ridiculous and also like sort of throws you off in terms of where the show ends up being. But I think that's where it. You know, it had me at robots doing pyramids, and then like you know completely took me over at Young Freud. And also, like, you know, I'm sure there's some sort of thematic reason in there, but I still can't seem to find it. Like, I know it's probably well thought out, but I can't seem to figure out why, other than it sounded cool.
Yes. I think that might be what it is. Yeah, I haven't watched this as many times as I did Evangelion, so I haven't read that deep into it yet. But I think you're right. There's probably some thematic reason for it. So yeah, one of the major points of this is, as you said earlier, they see a corpse of the alien. So they're young Freud, like, what is it? She challenges Noriko to.
No, it was Young challenges Kazumi to a battle because she was like the top of her class, and she like heard about her.
Okay, and so they end up like sneaking into part of the ship where they see a corpse of the alien that they will eventually be fighting, and they're kind of terrified by that. And Coach yells at them for seeing it, or for like, being there where they're not supposed to be there. And so in the second half of the episode, Noriko and Takumi are sent on a mission to investigate some object they detected traveling at near light speed. And it turns out that it was the battleship that Noriko's father was on. We didn't explain that. In the first episode, they call her the Daughter of Defeat because her dad was famously like an admiral who lost a battle against the space monsters. And so on this mission, they are sent to find this battleship. They didn't realize what it was. They are sent to find this object, and it turns out to be the battleship her father was on. So she jumps onto the ship where only 2 days have passed since the battle that ended his life because of time dilation, and she rips the door open to the main bridge, and there's like this crazy space anomaly in there. And then Coach jumps in to pull Noriko out and bring her back to the ship. And they are 12 seconds late getting back to the ship from the time that they were supposed to be, which is over 2 weeks of Earth time. So they're really introducing you to like how much time goes by when you're traveling, at near light speed. And I think it'll be used to like really great effect later.
Time dilation in general is just such an underutilized, like sci-fi trope because the implications of it, and I think this show explores it spectacularly, are like awfully frightening. There's a great, like, I'm not a huge anime head, like I rarely watch it, but there's, a great like Makoto Shinkai, short like OVA he did called Voices from a Distant Star, which is like a love story between two people, and as one of them goes like deeper into space, the years start passing as like the messages become more and more infrequent.
Wow.
And there's like, it's, by the way, it's really good. Like I'm pretty sure he did it all on his home computer. It was his first thing he ever did. Yeah. It's but just what a great hook for any story that involves like going into space. And like, yeah, this sets up, I like the way it escalates, because in this one it's just 2 weeks in episode 2, right? And then like we see where it inevitably goes, which is, yeah, I know the ending of the series, I might be jumping ahead a little bit, is hypothetically triumphant, but it's also like the what comes next question is really scary.
Yeah, and they keep basically like escalating the amount of time that goes by with each episode, and it kind of amplifies the drama of the passage of time.
And also, like, the stuff where, if this is a show, like, fundamentally, I think it is, like, a show about someone who's dealing with crippling loneliness, being part of an out-group, sort of being institutionalized into, like, a literal military-industrial complex, right? And the way, even the way the time dilation stuff separates her from her best friend and separates her from the people she loves down on Earth and all that stuff. It's used to like really good thematic effect as well. Like it really hammers home this idea that she is just this extremely lonely character perpetually throughout the show.
Yeah, I may or may not see myself in her in that way.
Definitely do. Like 100% I do.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it would be bad enough just to be like so far away from people, but then not only are you far away from them, but their lives are going by much faster than yours.
Which is like, I will argue, I don't want to like take off track from like the episode recaps, but I will argue that we're seeing that in like a small way with the acceleration of like, it's almost inverted in our day to day with how we experience information. Whereas like, if you're not online, you're inevitably missing something. You're missing the passage of time. You're more acutely aware of how deeply you're missing the passage of time, right? You're more acutely aware of the way, if you feel isolated and lonely, the way that those who you'd consider close to you are like happily living their lives and going on without you, right? Or if you move to a different place, like you're way more aware of life going on without you. And I think like, I'm not going to call the series prophetic, but I think it taps into, our current situation, like our sort of relationship to the posting way better than it did even then.
Yeah, for sure.
You guys might be able to answer this better than I would. Did like the other anime I'm watching right now is Slam Dunk from the
Okay.
90s. Did animation like take budget cut or something between the 80s and the 90s? Because this is like there are sequences that are like very clearly animated on ones. Like it's very smooth. It's like lavish in terms of how it builds out the like sets and the backgrounds and the paintings and stuff like that. But like maybe Slam Dunk is just different budget or whatever. But it looks for something that came out later looks significantly choppier and like way less finessed and detailed than this.
I mean, I think this show is really ahead of most other things in the quality of animation. Part of it is because it's an OVA. It's only 6 episodes, so they can use their budget a lot better. But then there's also episode 6 where they clearly ran out.
I like that though. I love that, like the
it looks
moving
great,
manga kind of thing. I kind of hope that they did that on purpose. You know, they still had extra money and they just threw some in their pockets. I'm just like, hey.
I think there's also like a period in the 90s. You can see it in Initial D where they're starting to use computer graphics, but it's very early, so it's very bad. And I don't know.
Like
I haven't
how
seen
CGI
Slam Dunk, so I don't know if
been-
they use CGI at all, but that could be part of it.
Gotcha. I guess I was like trying to think if there's a way to tie it into the like Lost Decade, right? Like the recession of the 1990s or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that played a role at all, but yeah, it's like the
Could be an
visual
interesting thing to look
flair
into.
of this is spectacular. I thought the end was actually intentional because we just watched Eva, a couple of weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
And I thought it was just something that Hideaki Anno does, is just make his last episode look like a sketchbook. I guess he did run out of budget.
Yeah, the end of Evangelion movie is supposedly like how he planned to end the series originally, but he didn't have the budget for it, so he went with what he did in the last 2 episodes.
Right. Okay, yeah. So I mean, give him 5-episode OVAs and not 6-episode OVAs, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, he always overspends by 1 episode.
Exactly 1.
Yeah. All right. So episode 3, Noriko is sent to a creepy part of the ship on a dare, and she meets Garo, the character from One Punch Man, who is in that series a villain, but really a hero if you think about it. And she seems to have a little crush on him. They go on their first combat mission with robots, and they mostly just get owned. Noriko's too terrified to do anything, and the battle is, like I said earlier, it's just darkness. So it's basically just sound, which, visually not the most appealing thing, but in terms of the story, I think it builds tension really well, because we don't see what the aliens look like. And Smith, Garo, does not come back from the battle, and then Excellion warps out, so we never see him again. And I don't know about y'all, but the first time I watched that, I was like, oh, this guy is kind of cool. I kind of like him. And then he doesn't come back from the battle. I'm like, oh, okay.
This was the moment where I was just kind of really shook after this episode. Because, it starts off with, the cutesy robots doing pyramids, and then just veers into, I would argue that this episode, this series was way darker than Evangelion. In terms of, the message and just, the emphasis and the, how things happen. Because rather than, seeing Smith get torn to pieces where you get closure, it's just, he's just gone. They don't know what happened to him. He could be floating around.
Maybe he did survive, but he's out in the middle of space now. You don't know.
Yeah, I think that the way they present that battle too is so good. Like the fact that it's just her in space trying to fight off these projectiles that she doesn't know where they're coming from. She's completely alone. She feels alone in the battle, and then she goes back, to the spaceship and finds out that Smith is, do they even use the word dead? They just always use the word gone, right? Am I incorrect? is that just a function of the subtitles? But like,
it might be like a military thing where if they don't find a body, they mark it MIA instead of KIA.
Right, they haven't found the oversized mech dog tags.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and that was kind of where, yeah, I agree, where it shifted for me too, in regards to being like, wow, this is like really scary. Like everything she's going through, not just on like the level of violence, but just the level of like loneliness. Like there's a scene where she goes into one of the quarters, or one room where like Smith's friends are like, it looks like they're holding like a little wake for him. And they just stare at her. Like, it's like she wants to go in. They just stare at her, and she just closes the door and leaves. And it's like, damn, dude, you can't even find someone to grieve with. That fucking sucks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just having a Coke by yourself.
Yeah, I wonder if they blamed her because they were partners, and he kind of told her, like, hey, you need to help me out, and she was too terrified to do anything.
Yeah, they gave her a nasty look when she entered that room. That was not a like, we're grieving. That was a, hey, you did this kind of look to me.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and it felt kind of like, you know, if I were in space in a giant robot and there were aliens flying around at me, like, I probably couldn't do much. I don't know.
All you got to do is start singing the theme song to Evangelion to yourself, and then you'll just get that energy.
There's something also, like, the way this sets up the culture of the ship, like this episode in particular, I think is really good. Especially, again, like, if you look at it as the only way Noriko ever gets, you know, allowed into the in-group is via institutionalization, right? When she, like, sort of gives up any part of her that has human relationships to things like fear. And just sort of like succumbs to, you know, this military apparatus around her. And this was a really good way of being like, this is what happens when you don't do that, right? Like, you're just some fuckhead who gets people killed and that no one wants to hang out with and that no one has any respect for and that no one wants to be around, right? You're a liability for feeling things.
Yeah, the themes of isolation in this were just very strong and just like, I don't know, I connected with them a lot, you know. It goes from the beginning of the episode where Noriko is, you know, isolated in kind of like a high school, oh, we're going to pick on you kind of way, to like existential just dread of being alone in space shortly after Smith goes quiet, to like people at a wake blaming you, like just whiplash from how much like different themes of isolation are coming together in this episode alone.
So, like, the major theme of the show is, like, pretty plainly stated quite a few times, I think, which is hardworking guts. That's, like, the main thing that the characters need to develop in order to, you know, resolve the conflict of the show. And if the first two episodes were the hard work part, where, you know, Noriko can't operate a giant robot, so she starts training really hard, and she gets better at it. That's the hard work part. And this is the guts part where she's too scared to fight. And as a result, it gets her new friend killed. And so in the next episode, she needs to start developing the guts to fight back against the space monsters. So in episode 4, we find out right at the beginning from, you know, some scientist character that the space monsters use young stars as nests and lay eggs in them. And they're sort of like galactic antibodies that are fighting, you know, people like us, intelligent life. And the scientist says humans serve no useful purpose in terms of space and are simply waste floating in the cosmos. And I think that was a pretty interesting, you know, sort of like monster, is like these things that use stars to like lay their eggs. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah,
No, you go.
Sorry.
No, you.
Okay. The bugs being, you know, accelerationists is an interesting, like, just overall thematic of the series. Because, you know, it also begs the question, like, would these bugs have ever existed without humans there, right? Would they ever have awoken, or even, are they even tangible if there isn't something to wipe out, right? Like, is it this idea of like galactic antibodies is intriguing. It's something that's been picked up a lot, like even Mass Effect, right? As a good example of like a series that picks up
that's
that
right.
idea. I also like the scientists' like tacit understanding of like, yeah, we are the bacteria, but like also, we're probably gonna win. Just his understanding that like humans are, existentially in the wrong here, but will probably still succeed is yeah, it's a very fun thing to examine, especially in like the background of being on an enormous military spaceship.
Yeah, I'm probably going to compare it to Eva a lot, but that like that enemy, the aliens, the difference between them was just that made it so much darker for me. Like the fact that it was just nature rather than like whatever Ava was, the fault of humans because they caused the first, was it the first impact? I don't remember. It's been too long. But like rather than humans did some stuff and we messed up, this was merely like, oh hey, we're just bad for the universe. So it was like that existential just horror.
And the hubris of knowing that too, right? Like the hubris of knowing you're bad for the universe and still like pushing through anyway. Like in one way you could say, oh, it's it's a commitment to like the guts and hard work of humanity that they're willing to push through this, but also no,
maybe change.
Yeah, just this idea that we can overcome this because we are the humans, right? Yeah, we are the parasite, but let's wear it like a badge. Or just the hubris of knowing thinking you can overcome nature, period, is very interesting, right? Like, you see that a lot with, like, technocratic relationships to climate change. Is like, yeah, the Earth will win, but we can take it on, right? Like, we can completely dominate the planet and somehow make it out alive.
Terraform the entire thing until it looks like later levels of the early Sonic games. Those, like, grotesque city structures.
And lots of loop-de-loops.
The loop-de-loops.
There's really not enough loop-de-loops in reality, I think. That's where we've really gone wrong.
Six Flags the planet. That's that's the new way to fix all of the issues.
So Amano talks to Coach about Noriko's lack of confidence and skill, leading to certain death either of her or someone else. And she says you can't put back spilt milk, referring to Smith. And Coach replies in kind of a really fucked up way. He says, when you spill milk, just pour some more. That is all. And just Jordan to make Peterson. It clear, the milk in this case is human lives.
I mean, he's really just saying hop on another dick is, I think, the like implication of what he's talking about. Which is still pretty fucked up. I don't think it makes it less fucked up, but yeah, it's good world building at least. I don't agree with the message, but they did a really great job communicating it.
I mean, it definitely seems like a thing that a military guy would say.
Yeah, they really hammer in the like Coach is fucked up and bad like message kind of a lot.
I mean, he's clearly not a good person, I think, throughout the show. Like, I think at one point you see him hit a woman. That was a thing,
Yeah, he definitely hits Amano.
Yeah, he selectively changes what his, like, method of ambulation is. Like, I think he has a cane, then a crutch, then two crutches. Then, like, it just sort of switches based on, circumstance, which I thought was really fun as well.
Okay, so Young challenges Noriko to a space duel, and she has a breakdown and cries that she doesn't want to go into space, so she's still terrified of fighting in space because of her last mission. And Young kind of freaks out. She's like, wow, geez, I wasn't trying to like make you cry or anything.
You gonna cry? You gonna piss? Shit.
Which her name is Young Freud. She should be trying to make her cry.
Or have sex with her mother.
So the rest of the episode the space monsters attack the Excellion, and they are much stronger than they originally anticipated. And we get the resolution of the guts part of the hardworking guts thing when Noriko launches in Gunbuster when all hope seems lost and fights the biggest space monster. It only has 10 minutes of power, which is another great tension building choice they made, I guess. And so when she only has 2 minutes left of power, she allows Gunbuster to be impaled by the space monster so that she can get like a solid hit on it. She uses like this electrical like taser arm thing and makes the space monster explode. It looks at first like she may not have made it, like she died in the explosion. But then we get like a musical montage that starts with the theme song, and she comes out, she's okay. And like, I think this could have easily been the final episode, and it would have been like pretty good, you know, like they had the conflict of it takes hardworking guts to fight space monsters, and they resolve the conflict, and you know, they have the nice musical ending. But there's 2 more fucking episodes.
Well, I would have been really mad if they didn't stop the space monsters from coming back, because they won one battle and now it's all over.
This was the moment where if it had ended here, it would have been, like, arguably just as dark of an ending as where the show ends up going. Like, where she's, literally, you see her in the thought process of, like, I must give up all of my feelings and just focus on fighting these monsters. That is what bravery is, right?
Yeah.
And then she does it and she wins. I made me think of a time, like I was on a picket line, like negative 40-degree weather up in northern Canada at one point. And I was like, damn, dude, it's cold. And then like one of the strike captains is like, oh, just tell yourself it's not cold. Just feel like it's not cold and you'll be fine. And so I tried that, just like, I'm just going to forget it's cold. I'm just going to fight through this, ignore it's cold. And for a while it worked. Until I, like, got into the heater van, looked at my fingers, and I had, like, looked like I was getting frostbite. I'm like, actually, no, this is the stupidest thing, stupidest piece of advice anyone has ever given me, because I'm cold, and me just convincing myself it's not cold is actually going to, like, hurt me, right?
Yeah, we experience pain for a good reason.
Yeah, exactly, and it's like you feel fear and, like, anger and, like, negative emotions for a reason, right? And it's... Again, just like the way they present like the military industry of this series is, I would argue, like maybe the darkest part of it after the time dilation, but specifically the fact that she just has to like give up any of that. I mean, it's not necessarily new with the idea of like being in military or stuff like that, but the way they articulate it was, I mean, depressing as hell.
Yeah, the consequences of war theme was like really great, especially with Coach, because you know, the stuff you find out about later with his illness and, you know, when they talk about his story of how he fought in that first battle with the space monsters.
God, you're spoiling the thing that we're going to spoil in like 5 minutes. What the fuck, dude?
Oh, damn it.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
Oh, but wasn't Noriko's dad's ship like the one that like triggered the space monsters coming? Like they hadn't seen space monsters at all before that?
Supposedly, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, Coach is just like...
I think that's victim blaming, personally.
It's his own fault. But if anything, he's like a messed up, horrible person, because, like, that's jarring. Everybody else who encountered the space monsters, except for the first people on that ship, knew that they were space monsters. To them, it was just like, oh, let's go do some space exploring, Star Trek, and then all of a sudden, fucking eldritch horrors come out of nowhere, start shooting shit at you.
They do kind of look like kind of Lovecraftian to me.
Yeah, definitely.
They're like weird flower petal spaceships and stuff like that were absolutely rad. Like it reminded me of like the descriptions of the like, okay, this is embarrassing, but like the Yuzhan Vong from the Star Wars expanded universe and stuff like that. Just like the idea of living warfare is while not good, is also like super cool when explored in like a speculative way.
Yeah. When it's a cartoon, it's cool. And when it's real, it fucking sucks.
Yeah, it's like how cop movies are good, but cop cops themselves are very bad.
All right, so episode 5, they've beaten the space monster. Noriko and Amano return to Earth. They receive an honorary degree from the Giant Robot Pilot Academy. For them, it's only been 4 months, but on Earth, 10 years have passed. And her former classmates are in their mid-20s now. So one of her classmates is a coach at the academy. And Noriko runs into her best friend Kimiko walking around, who now has a 2-year-old daughter because she's old. Kimiko and Noriko talk about a new generation of space battleship, which is also a lifeboat for people on Earth. And Kimiko asks Noriko if she can use her connections as the great hero of Earth to get her daughter a spot on the ship in case the Earth succumbs to the space monster invasion. So Noriko makes a call in her bedroom, which has Totoro and Nausicaa posters on the wall, which I thought was a nice touch. I also thought this was like the most appropriate use of nudity in the show. Like, you could definitely see a girl like Kimiko, being in her room without a bra on the phone. I think that's very realistic.
Definitely more realistic than especially that last episode or
the bath scenes, yeah.
The bath scene, which was, again, like, just extremely, uncomfortably horny energy emanating from Hideaki Anno in, like, everything he does. Even Shin Godzilla for some reason. But, like, when you look at Godzilla Power Up, it's very hot. But, like, yeah, that was, the point where it didn't, like, stand out at all.
Yeah. But the next scene, on the other hand, Noriko talks to Young on the beach, and it is exactly the opposite. It's like the most male-gazy scene in the series, even though there's like less nudity, I guess.
The idea of also using nepotism to get your kids onto a mega lifeboat that will, spare humanity should all things go south, I thought was really cool. Like, I don't know if you remember the animated children's film that destroyed Fox Animation, Titan AE.
Yes, I remember. I liked it when it came out because I was like 12.
Yeah, I actually loved it. Like, Creed music video aside, it was actually not terrible at all. But, like, it features a similar plot, right? Of, like, humans getting on this ark to potentially save the planet and stuff. Yeah. And, like, the idea of, like, can you use your connections to do this is, like, the second Elon Musk builds, the Cybertruck to Mars or whatever, it's going to be exactly like that, right? Where it's just like whatever her political power helped him build this are the only people besides him and his rich friends who are getting on that ship.
Yeah, it's interesting. Futurama had the only sane system for in terms of lifeboat ethics. It was just completely random and irrational. Just stick your finger into a machine and then it's like, I don't know. Sure.
The Roland Emmerich movie 2012 also had lottery system, I believe. If anyone saw that movie and remembers it.
I was trying to think of what movie I remembered a scene like this from, and yeah, it was that for sure.
Where yeah, it's there's 2 billion Chinese people, but only 30 million can get on the Ark, so we're having a lottery system, right? But also the rich and powerful get to go as well. Like, that was perhaps a weird woke moment in Roland Emmerich's disaster masterpiece.
Yeah.
I'm actually stunned I even remember that at all.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that movie until you mentioned it just now. Wow.
Remember when that was our biggest problem? Was like, oh my god, what if the world ends in 2012?
Oh, the Mayan calendar.
Man, yeah, I was not like a 2012 truther by any means. I wasn't like a Mayan calendar guy, but you know what? A part of me, like the doomer part of me, is like, man, I wouldn't have had to like go to work as a adult if that had happened. Like, I think about 2012, the idea, not the movie, like far more than I should have. Because like all of our threats are more existential now, and they're all within our control, which makes them feel like even more hopeless.
Yeah. Ugh. Okay. To steer away from that dark tangent, let's go to a different dark thing, which is in the series, the military has found that a new swarm of space monsters is heading to Earth, and it's over 80 astronomical units wide. If you don't know, an astronomical unit is the distance from the Earth to the sun. So very,
Jeez.
very large.
That's a lot of feet.
Yeah. A couple million miles, I think.
2.96 e to the 13th. 13th power.
Is that feet or miles?
No, that's in feet.
Okay. I was going to say,
Miles
Jesus.
is to the 9th power.
Okay. So Amano and Noriko basically get called back to, I guess it's the new ship to fight the aliens. So they go to Coach's office. Amano is already talking to Coach when Noriko arrives, and we see her say something inaudible. I think there's like storm noise over it. And this is when Coach slaps her. And then so Amano leaves, and Noriko discovers that Coach has space radiation sickness, and he may not make it another year. And I guess one thing we should make clear is that Amano has like this weird relationship with Coach that will eventually blossom into marriage. And
Which is weird, because isn't she like... They're in high school.
yeah,
Right?
she's like 17.
Well, I mean, still weird and creepy, but I thought it was much worse, because usually, like, people in anime are, like, 13.
I think
14.
Noriko is 15 at the start.
Right. She really wanted, senpai to notice her. That's, every anime is fundamentally about getting senpai to notice you, and this is just another example of that.
I cannot counter that argument.
That's my unifying theory of... on Kino Lefter, we have something called the McDonald test.
Okay.
Which posits that every movie since Silver Linings Playbook is about overcoming toxic masculinity with your found family while getting past childhood trauma. And that's the grand unifying theory of cinema. I dare you to find me something that doesn't fit that mold, by the way. And, every anime is just that. It's about getting senpai to notice you. It's like a very stripped-down version of the McDonald test.
I think you're probably right about that.
I'm going to dedicate my life to disproving both these theories now. I have a ton of movies to watch, starting with the Sharknado series, because that's got to contradict it somehow.
The Sharknado series does not actually. We've had this conversation.
Damn it. I will find one. It'll be some obscure movie only released on YouTube that has a total of like 3 views, but it's out there.
So Noriko and Amano are in a rocket. They're about to depart on their mission where they are going to basically create a black hole in the center of the swarm in order to, suck them all up and neutralize the threat. So while they're on the launch pad, Noriko tries to talk to Amano about Coach, and Amano says she needs to worry about the billions of lives they need to save rather than his one life. But you can see in her face that that's just like a rationalization she's giving herself, and she actually does like really care about it. And as they're about to launch into space on a mission that will take 6 months on Earth, Amano says that Coach may not make it that long. So Kimiko and her daughter watch the two of them fly off. And by the way, her daughter can talk way too well for a 2-year-old. She's like, "Where are they going,
walk way
Mommy?"
too well for a 2-year-old.
And Kimiko cries, I'm guessing because she knows that she may not see her again and because of the time differences, which I thought was a nice moment. As they near the target, the swarm, Amano has a breakdown like Kimiko did before. She doesn't want to deal with Coach's death, especially having never confessed her very wrong feelings for him. Noriko encourages her by reminding her how her other friends' lives are still depending on them, even if Coach isn't going to be around. They still have other people they care about. And that gets her to, get back on the saddle and, do ultra powerful kicks to space monsters in Gunbuster. So Gunbuster finally fights at full power, and it's awesome and ridiculous. There's lots of different kinds of overpowered lasers that kill massive swarms of enemies. Shield that reflects any attacks that looks like a cape. There's like shock probes and, god punches and kicks. It's a really fun fight.
So why does Gunbuster need treads?
I thought that too. Why?
Wait, it has treads?
It was definitely like the one thing that stood out in Gunbuster's arsenal was like, why would you put easily breakable mechanical pieces that won't even get used to actually make it like easier to penetrate the armor? Gunbuster does not need treads.
it was a style choice, you know. Thus was the fashion at the time. Everything had treads. If you look under the Exilion, it actually had just tiny little treads under it.
With a lot of questions in giant robot anime, the answer is most likely to sell toys.
Oh, yeah. I forgot.
Mechas and fucking Heelys, you know, throughout the universe.
I've always wanted to see a giant robot with Heelys. They never do that for some reason. The only one that I've seen is this very obscure Xbox game called Phantom Crash. They had something like that.
In general, like this would be a good point to like maybe mention. The show has a lot of product placement. And it feels like very natural. It feels like through all of this, the only thing that would persist is like the Coca-Cola Corporation. But I mean, they had a lot of the like girls in like Converse and like Chuck Taylors, and they should have put those on the mechas. Like, I really think the opportunity to personalize one's own mecha was a missed thing in this.
When are we gonna get a goth mecha? Let's be real.
That would be
Yeah, for real.
Your big titty goth mecha.
The eye cameras have eyeliner around them.
Oh my god, wings.
That would be so funny. Oh my god. I want a skater mecha wearing a fucking Thrasher t-shirt.
Okay, somebody needs to make one of those like corny high school animes, but with just mechas. Like with the jock mechas and the nerd mechas, and I would watch the hell out of that. I don't care how
white belt mecha with tight pants. Instead of a golden antenna thing, it has like, you know, cool scene hair that's like, you know, black underneath and green on top.
The raccoon tail.
Yeah.
Lo-fi beats to chill, relax, and study to, but it's a mecha girl studying with like an oversized pencil.
Stoner mecha. Run around smoking giant
awesome.
mecha joints that's filled with like green bolts or something really bad.
Okay, here's an idea. A mecha that rips on a jewel, like a giant jewel that also becomes a Buster Sword.
Okay, we need to pivot. Give up on podcasting. We're making an anime.
I've been wanting to do that.
I mean, I looked up when I mentioned that Makoto Shinkai did that anime entirely on his computer. I looked up to make sure I was right. I still have the page open. He did the entire thing, written, directed, and produced on his Power Mac G4 using Adobe Photoshop 5.0, the fourth version of After Effects and Lightwave, which doesn't even exist anymore, and produced like a 33-minute OVA. So, I mean, you could. It's definitely possible.
I think I'd rather go with claymation. It's a lost art
first
form.
claymation anime ever.
Aardman presents Mecha High School.
Wallace and Gromit, but anime.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. So they fight off the swarm. The Exelion, which is what they were going to turn into the black hole. I forgot that part. Exelion gets turned into a black hole near Jupiter to suck in the swarm. And they have a little emotional moment over losing Exelion since it was their home for 4 months in space / 10 years on Earth. And then the two return to Earth, and Coach is still alive. And is this where they have the wedding, or is it the next one?
They have their wedding in episode 5.
I kind of blocked that out.
So this, again, they could have ended the series here, would have been good, but still one more episode.
The best one.
So how do we feel about them getting married? That was one of my least favorite parts, but I guess it's one of those things where it's like they don't have to be good people for you to like think the show is good, you know?
I mean, I also don't know the relationship to that sort of thing within like the culture at the time, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, even just the like way the show sexualizes like girls in high school is like, you know, extremely fucked up. I know it's not like a new anime trope by any stretch of the imagination, even at that point.
Or an 80s film trope. That was one of the things I kept thinking of was like, well, you know, if you look at American movies in the 80s, they have actual teenage girls in there being sexualized, and that's definitely a lot worse. Not that this is like good, but
yeah, like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, right?
Yeah.
Like it gets a lot more fucked up when you realize like the character you're watching is like a high school junior, I think.
yeah.
And stuff like that. So I mean, like, I don't know if, you know, marriage to that degree was just considered normal at the time. I, you know, don't know a lot about Japan in the 80s.
Right.
But you can see it also filled with a lot of things that have changed, right? Like just the idea, given Japan's declining birth rate, that someone who's only like 25 would have a 2-year-old, right? Would be probably more extremely rare now relative
True.
to how it was in the 80s and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know if that's just was, something people wouldn't blink twice at. In retrospect, it still seems a little, fucked up to look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and part of the reason supposedly that they sexualized the characters so much is because it was not super common for an anime targeted towards, well, I don't know if this is supposed to be targeted towards men and women or just men, but for something targeted to men to have an like all female main character cast, they felt like they had to sexualize them a bit to like keep men's attention.
Well, the gender dynamics of the military are so weird because, like, yeah, you've got an overwhelmingly female cast of like frontline fighters, but they're all taking their orders from like men in military positions, right?
Yeah.
Which, on its face, there's something a little weird about that, and it gets. I felt like I sort of became more cognizant of it as the show went. Actually, no, I didn't become cognizant of it at all. Like my partner mentioned that, and I'm like, damn, I didn't notice that. I guess like I should cancel myself. But like, that was something that was brought up and like mentioned, and also feels like you need to stick it in there for the fellas. You know what I mean? Fellas, you know what I'm talking about?
Can't put these ladies in charge.
Can't have an all-female cast if they don't show their huge cans.
Yeah.
Just it's gratuitous at points. I know it's just also like a Hideaki Anno thing, but
my favorite aspect of it is all of the women when they're like shown getting to their uniforms, they have like lingerie on. It's like, come on, put them in a fucking sports bra at least.
This is a show also about the dangers of not wearing a sports bra, because in the last episode when she, blows up her suit to save the world.
Yeah.
And that was like another thing where Megan pointed out to me, she's like, she has been in space now, floating back to Earth for like a couple of months, but that whole time while she's like eating, I don't know, space mecha MREs while trying to get back to Earth at the end of the series, like, her tits would have just been like floating without gravity in space.
It's the perfect bra
for like
0G.
Yeah, yeah. No, the horniness of the show cannot be overstated. It is very weird.
Yeah, yeah. I was a little worried. Like, after we agreed to do this episode, I was like, should I warn him about how horny it is? I don't know.
Maybe Gunbuster would have been a good one to warn. Like in the title sequence alone, you get to see the main character's tits like 8 times or something. Every other scene, just like kick with boobs out, punch with boobs out, running down the beach with boobs out.
Incredible, and that's not even Hideaki Anno. That's just the next pervert they had in the studio.
Yeah,
it was a drastic uptick.
Trying to keep the vibe the same.
I wonder what aim for the top 3 is gonna be. If it's just gonna be like all naked all the time, everything has boobs. They put boobs on the mechs. They put boobs on the Excellion. They put boobs on the space monsters.
The men have boobs.
Oh yeah,
that would be awesome. That would be extremely good and woke. No, but you see, if you wear clothing, period, it interferes with your ability to psychically interface with the mech. Therefore, you cannot be wearing basically any clothes at all. Also, if you're older than 25, your brain has deteriorated past 97%, so you will cease to be able to interface with the mech. Hence, aim for the top 3.
Episode 6. First of all, it's in black and white, which is very cool looking. It takes place 15 years after episode 5. Amano is the new coach and is about to depart on some sort of mission. And her students come up and give her 1,000 paper cranes. If you don't know the symbolic significance of that, 1,000 paper cranes is supposed to be, like extremely good luck in Japan. If you're like, if you have a terminal illness, people will give you 1,000 paper cranes to try and, give you enough luck to survive, stuff like that.
That's a pretty cool detail. I didn't know that. I didn't know what the significance of the cranes was.
Yeah, I know one other series I know that has it is Ghost in the Shell. There's a subplot where Motoko, when she's young, falls in love with this boy who he's like paralyzed, and she is one of the first people to get a prosthetic body, and she uses her new prosthetic hands to try and fold 1,000 paper cranes, and he sadly dies before she's able to finish.
Also, that's cheating. If you're using cyber hands to rapidly produce 1,000 paper cranes...
Well, the whole thing is the
like...
technology was so early that it was like a handicap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, if she was using it to like hyperfold,
it's not like the keyboard typing scene in the movie. All right. So anyway, Amano arrives on the new ship that they're on. Noriko and Young are on there. They haven't aged very much. For them, it's only been 6 months relative to Amano's 15 years, which the moment where they address that is like, I think, pretty emotionally devastating. What did you guys think of that moment they had?
It was like the grand finale of the well, not really, but it was the best example of like the time dilation difference in the series. Like, it was drastic and very jarring.
I like how it tries to present some sort of positive outcome that we end up taking time dilation sort of for granted, so that your relationships don't actually decay and stuff like that. Like, they seem as close as they were 15 years prior. I don't know if I buy it in terms of just human beings in general and the way we form relationships, but I thought the spin they tried to give it was, at the very least, mildly heartwarming, even if it feels, antithetical to what it means to be a social person.
Uh-huh.
I got very Highlander vibes from it. That the immortal person who lives past all their friends and family.
Yeah.
Just terrifying.
I think one of the aspect that I liked about it was Amano brings a message from Kimiko's daughter, who is about to graduate high school now. I thought that was a nice touch. Another interesting thing about this scene is Noriko has a poster for The War in Space, which is a 1977 tokusatsu film. So she's into 20th century Japanese films and anime and stuff. I like that part of her character.
Yeah, she's an old school anime head. She's also kind of an elitist when you talk to her about it.
Once they started doing CGI, anime really went downhill.
Another appropriate opening song for this series would have been an anime remix of Cats in the Cradle.
Another little nugget that I noticed is there's a psychic dolphin on the ship.
Yes.
I didn't see if he had a garage or not.
And if you watch it for anything, go to episode 6, go a quarter of the way through it, and just find that space dolphin, pause it, and just leave it. Leave that screen on for however long the whole series is. Best way to watch the show.
Yeah, for sure.
The weird hentai game for DOS computers that Hideaki Anno made based on Gunbuster should have been exclusively hentai psychic dolphins.
Wait, kind of burying the lead there. He did what?
Oh, I did some a deep dive on Gunbuster last night and found out that Hideaki Anno made a Gunbuster trivia game for MS-DOS that was also a hentai game. You answer questions and the characters get progressively more naked in 16-bit.
Oh, it was 16-bit. I was kind of hoping it was in ASCII or something awful.
But the best part of it is that the one screenshot that was on the article I was reading, it was young Freud, posed very seductively, but then there was glitch art of Lenin behind her, which was absolutely incredible.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it and like email it to you if you want to put it in the show notes because it's amazing.
Sure. So they are using another black hole bomb to fight a even bigger swarm of space monsters. Their big space battle is to protect the black hole bomb that they've created, which has Jupiter at the center of it, which is a pretty crazy aspect. So they have this big space battle with the space monsters, and this whole scene is done like a manga. They just show different cuts of still shots. It's very cool looking. They have some like animated effects, but they're just like special effects for the still shots. And then at the end of the battle, they show like statistics of like how many space monsters were killed, how many ships were destroyed, how many of them were damaged, and so on. It was a cool scene. The music was really great for that scene, I think. Probably would have been nice to have like a full-on animated gratuitous space battle, but I think, you know, if they ran out of budget, I think they handled it very well and made it cool anyway.
Also, if it wasn't, you know, the ability, because something that grand might have been borderline impossible to like animate in the same style. So they like kind of had that grandiose feeling with the minimalism.
Yeah.
Your brain fills in the gaps.
And especially showing the numbers was such a cool touch. Like, you know, again, I'm not like the most knowledgeable on anime at all. Like, I rarely watched mecha anime, aside from like Eva and a couple others before this. But, you know, with the series in general, like the mechs and the battles are almost like they're cool to watch and very fun, but they're so incidental to like the rest of the series, or in a lot of ways they're like the least interesting part.
Yeah.
You know, despite the fact that they're extremely well done, well put together, and like again awesome to watch, but like when it really starts going into these like moments where you see the scale of the time dilation, or where it shows you the scale of the deaths, it doesn't feel like it was because of a budget cut. Like, it feels very somber, right?
Yeah, it reminds me of, this is kind of a random reference, but the second poem to Mary by, God, what's his fucking name? The war poem guy.
The guy who wrote Flanders Fields, that's the only war poet.
Ernest Hemingway. There's a part in that poem where he is like, he's talking about how like bureaucratic the war is, and he's like reciting deaths in like the terminology that they use in the military, and this kind of reminds me of that. It like kind of feels like all these people were real people that really died, but we're just seeing it from the like very disconnected, like cold, logical end of it, where, you know, they're just numbers on a sheet.
Well, yeah, if being really bad at Call of Duty 2 on Veterans Mode has taught me anything, it's that the death of one is a tragedy and the death of millions is a statistic.
Yeah.
As that is the text every time you die.
All right, so you know, they fight the big space battle to protect the black hole bomb, and then they're relieved. They're like, you know, finally, this thing is about to, you know, go off. We'll be finished with the space monsters. This will be the last time. The captain of the ship keeps talking about God, and when the black hole bomb fails to trigger, he asks if there is no God or if we've been abandoned by God. And right as he's saying that, Noriko launches in Buster Machine number 1, which is half of Gunbuster, to go detonate it herself. And then Amano joins her quickly, and they turn into Gunbuster. So I kind of wonder if that's... I think that's supposed to be like thematically like, you know, God isn't coming to save you, you need to save yourself kind of thing.
Well, they literally bring up the fact that these insects are, you know, antibodies for the universe. So if there was a God, he wouldn't be on your side.
Yeah.
Right?
Good
like
point.
that's such a like telling moment where it's like, you know, we are we are obviously sentient, we are obviously self-aware, therefore God is with us, which is like antithetical to the everything that was presented prior to that moment in terms of the relationship between like bugs and humans.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
I want to see a different OVA of this where it's from the perspective of the universe and it's just freaking out. They're like mining all the planets. It's like they keep setting off radioactive bombs and building mechas. We gotta be.
It's like
it's a really sad moment. It ends in like a very fucking tragic way where the universe loses.
Yeah, God's ant farm gets destroyed.
God gets destroyed by the ant farm. We're gonna kill God with mechas and black hole bombs.
I would love to see like an actual, like, I know there's been a couple of, you know, speculative or fantasy series that involve humans going to like literally fight God. You know, I know Eva touches on that a little bit, but it would be really interesting to see like, you know, heaven is real and we're going to exploit the shit out of it. Like fantasy series at some point, or even like it would be great for an anime. I would love to see anime God.
Yeah,
There is that
seen
one series that has anime death, which is sort of close. Soul Eater?
Soul Eater.
Yeah.
I'm still mad about that series. The fucking ending.
All right, so Young follows them into the black hole bomb as they're descending into it. In her like normal non-Gunbuster robot, which is not as good. Young thinks they're on a suicide mission, but they say like, no, we're not on a suicide mission. We're coming back. Don't worry. And Young points out it could take centuries or millennia to get back to Earth, and that'll become relevant in a minute. Gunbuster triggering the bomb is done very symbolically, I think. So they arrive on the surface of Jupiter, I guess is what it's supposed to be, and Gunbuster rips out its heart and offers it to the bomb, basically, because it's using its power reactor to cause the detonation. And in doing this, Noriko like tears her shirt open, which I kind of think is symbolic, but maybe is not, and I can't really defend my opinion that
horny.
it is.
I think it's like a medieval thing where like bearing your chest was like a sign of like ultimate, like you're gonna win no matter what. Like, go ahead, shoot me with an arrow. Like, I'm just gonna kill you all.
I just thought it was supposed to be like one last, horny cry before the heat death of the universe.
Look at my titties before I die.
Yeah, God let them win because he saw them titties.
Yeah, I wondered if it was like something to do with like motherhood, like, feeding the robot with her breast or something like that. I don't know. Probably
it's an
wrong.
act of solidarity to, if Gunbuster's going to get his heart ripped out, then the least she could do is just show some titties. Really quick, you mentioned the power generators. I kind of chuckled the first time because they're named the
degeneracy machines.
Yeah, that was, I don't know why that was so funny to me.
It is hilarious. Like that, I took like I think 9 notes total about this series, and at least 4 of those notes were about degeneracy machines.
That's why there's so much
just
teeth.
like, yeah, just like degenerates destroying. Like, this is the most like tradcath anime I've ever seen. Jung Freud, the Soviet, for some reason has a fucking cross around her neck.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, that was really weird.
Yeah, the degeneracy generator, which like it's just anime in general, like. But yeah, no, that was hilarious. Also, the fact that the guy in charge, the admiral, mentions at one point in that episode that they're 0.0001% behind schedule, got a little like chuckle out of me as well. Just like imagine being able to calculate out your effectiveness to that degree.
Yeah. All right, so they detonate the bomb. It turns into a black hole, and Gunbuster is basically just a torso. And they are making their way back to Earth, and they finally arrive, and it has been 12,000 years. So by the time they get to Earth, it doesn't look like it does now, where there's lights lighting up the dark parts of the Earth all the time. So they worry that maybe humanity has perished and, all is for naught. But then a bunch of lights come on saying welcome back for them. Although the last character is backwards, which I totally knew and didn't have to look up because I can read Japanese. And that's basically the end.
I went and checked the Wikipedia article on the show after I finished watching it, and I think they mentioned that the implication of that last character being backwards was that it was like a new civilization pantomiming the old one.
Yeah.
Which language has evolved, but they kept this going as much as they could because they knew they would be coming back. Which is both really cool but really scary. It's like the ending of AI where the kid wakes up and robots have replaced humanity completely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what do you even do with those people now? Do you put them in some sort of simulation where they can live out the rest of their lives? Do you put them in some sort of weird zoo? Everything you ever knew or loved is gone forever because you did this thing, and it's where do you go from here? Nowhere. You're going to live out the rest of your lives alone with each other amongst a race of people who, you probably have zero linguistic or emotional or any sort of tangible or emotional connection with.
Yeah, for sure. There was another series that I watched called Giant Gorg, which is also an 80s mecha anime. And one of the plot points for that was there was a race of aliens that came to Earth 30,000 years ago. And one of them is, he's the last one remaining. And he's what the fuck do I do? Do I join civilization or I have no connection to anyone? Everyone that I ever knew is dead now. And yeah, it's a really hard question to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in a lot of ways, if you suffer from crippling isolation, loneliness, and depression, you feel like that all the time. But I also wonder what it would be like to feel that, but also know it actualized.
Yeah.
The implications of that final episode are one of the scariest endings to something I've ever seen. I would also just say that in a lot of ways this felt a lot more complete than Eva to me.
Yes.
In terms of just having a theme, carrying it over, having something akin to a definitive ending. Whereas between Eva and End of Eva and now the movies, I feel that is something where Hideaki Anno keeps tooling with it because he's never going to be quite happy with it. Without knowing him at all, right? Or reading up on it. But whereas the fact that this hasn't gotten a remake, correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like it was intentional and meant to be as long as it was and meant to have this very powerful conclusion.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. So, I guess what are our feelings overall of the series?
I loved it. I loved it hands down. The scene right before the welcome back came on. I don't usually go, oh no, in real life, but I yelled it. I was freaking out, thinking that everybody on the planet was dead. So that really got me by surprise. But Ava was probably tied for number one in my top animes, and this is probably usurped. Whatever, beat it. Usurped. Can't think of the word.
Usurped.
Yeah. It's taken the throne.
And you said you have a hard time normally paying attention to subtitled anime, but you watch this pretty much all the way through.
First try. Gunbuster didn't pick up my phone at all. Diebuster, I had to rewind it a few times because I kept, going on Twitter. But I cannot watch subtitles most of the time. I'm still going to go back and rewatch this because I missed a lot of the visual stuff because I was busy reading. But but yeah, that was amazing to me because I I tried to watch Eva subtitled before it was out dubbed, and wait, no, not before it was out dubbed. Before it was out on Netflix dubbed, I think. But like, could not do it. Any anime that I get the ball rolling on, and I'm like, I love this. Oh, the dubbed episodes ended. Better switch to sub. I get like half an episode in, and I'm like, I missed all of that. So this was amazing.
I feel that, like, as a passive viewer with a lot of anime, like, I definitely feel that, but, like, I'm pretty much in the same boat you are with it, where it's just, like, I didn't quite know what to expect going into this, like, don't watch, a ton of mecha anime, but, like, fuck, man, this hits, you know what I mean? Like, there were points where I sort of had to pause and think, like, man, like, I really feel what this character is going through right now, and it's the way it sort of magnifies the feeling by using space, by using time dilation, by using this, like, societal, this, like, military-industrial complex she's just a cog in, right? It evoked, like, an emotional reaction in me, like very few animes ever have. Historically, I've only ever cried at a single episode of one anime, and that was the episode where, spoilers, Wolfwood dies in Trigun.
Okay. Just bragging about not crying. Okay.
Oh yeah. I don't ever cry in anime because, as I've mentioned before, it's a degenerate art form. No, it's anime is actually incredible.
We get it. You're emotionally stable.
Yeah, like very, very like deep, very like a lot of stuff to think about. Very sad, and like the completeness of it is like definitely in its favor.
Yeah.
For me, like over something like Eva, where it's just, okay, I've seen all 6 episodes of this, and I feel like I've gotten a complete story. I don't feel unsatisfied, and like any lingering questions I have about the ending are just the hallmarks of a good ending, rather than the hallmarks of something where you're like, why the fuck did I sit through 6 hours to not have those questions answered, right?
Yeah, it was. I still can't believe that was only 6 episodes. Like that.
It felt longer.
Yeah, that shook me more than most like hundreds of episode animes have. Like.
Yeah, the second time I watched it through, I remembered the basic plot points, and when I got to episode 4, I was like, wait, what the fuck? This is already happening in episode 4?
Yeah, you feel like, you just got done with like One Piece at the end of it, with like the character development. Like, yeah, this is 800 episodes, right?
It doesn't feel rushed, though, at all.
No.
Like, it's still, like, very patient for how quickly it moves, which is awesome, I really do want to watch Gunbuster now that I'm done this, but I'm afraid it won't be as good, and that frustrates me.
I like Gunbuster a lot. Like, I'm notorious for liking bad animes that people are like, you like Darling in the Franxx? That was the worst. I was like, I thought it was good, but I really like Gunbuster. Like, I was Googling, when Aim for the Top 3 is going to come out. 2022.
Oh, for real?
Nice.
Yeah, 2022. Awesome. That's what they're talking about. Also... They have their one anime that one of the directors is working on now, something from the Blue or something like that. That's coming out next year. And then they're hoping for 2022 for Aim for the Top 3.
Is that going to be Anno, or is that someone else?
They had a different director for Gunbuster, so it'll probably be someone else.
And that's the other hard part, like, I think with anime is, like, I feel... Because I know even just the culture of producing anime and remake culture and stuff is very different than, like, my primitive Western brain... will, allow me to respect and stuff like that. But it's hard when you see someone like Anno, who has, like, such a keen and specific creative vision and, like, skill for world building. And it's hard to see someone else take that over. Like, I know it's inevitable, but at the same time, that's another reason I'm, like, hesitant to hit Gunbuster is, like, will it explore these things as fully? Will it have that, like, flair I appreciate from this or Eva, right?
It's different. It's very different.
It's definitely very different.
But the twists and the turns were just, I was on the edge of my seat for a lot of that.
Intriguing.
But
I might have to check it out.
Disclaimer, I am, like, notorious for being like, I like this anime, and then the room turns against me. So, like...
I do think Gunbuster is good. I definitely think it's not as good as Gunbuster. And if you're looking for something that is exactly as good, you will definitely be disappointed. But as a sequel, it exceeds my expectations for a sequel that is not directed by the original guy.
Yeah.
Okay, I will check it out inevitably, I'm sure.
99% of the time, sequels are awful, and this wasn't. So I guess that makes it a great sequel.
All right. Anyway, so just to wrap everything up, for me, Gunbuster is in my top 10 all-time anime now, which is pretty high honor because I've seen a fuckload of anime. I'm really surprised that no one recommended it to me because in every respect, I would call it a 9 or 10 out of 10 show. The animation, story, characters, music, themes, and enjoyment are all perfect. The only negative for me is the weird nudity stuff, but that's probably a plus for a lot of people. And yeah, to quote Una, it's a great show, 10 out of 10, watch it or die.
Nice.
So, okay, Abdul, do you have anything you would like to plug?
Yeah, actually. So I host a podcast with two other wonderful people called Kino Lefter. You can find it at Kino Lefter on Twitter. Where podcast that reviews whatever movie is coming out into theaters that week from like a explicitly, I mean, there's a range of like left political opinions, but like let's just call it like a broadly socialist perspective. You know, movies obviously impact and reflect on the culture and inform it. So yeah, Kino Lefter. We've had some great guests on in the past. You should definitely come on at some point.
Yeah, that'd be
Brian
awesome.
from Street Fight, Do Not Eat, 01, who we love and adore. A couple others who I'm forgetting about because I'm an asshole. And you can also not follow me on Twitter because I'm currently jacked on Twitter, thanks to Pete Buttigieg's fans. But like you can follow. I'm a professional photographer. You can follow my work on Instagram and at Abdul Y Malik, and you can also read my essays and writing. AbdulYMalik.com. I will be updating it with some stuff I wrote on the closure of tech for Briar Patch Magazine sometime this week when I have a free minute. But yeah, follow at Kino Lefter on Twitter. It's a really fun show, and we have a great time doing it. And if you're in Edmonton, come to our live show in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I really recommend your 1917 episode. I saw that because my girlfriend likes to see the Oscar movies when the Oscars are coming up, and I had planned to avoid it because I thought it was going to be basically exactly what it was. And it was nice to hear someone else who had similar feelings to me about the movie, but is much better able to explain them. I think y'all did a great job. Oh, thank you so much.
No, we really appreciate it. That we've gotten a lot of good feedback on that episode, and yeah, it's always nice to hear that people are actually like listening to us, say stupid shit into the void. But yeah, no, thank you so much. I also have to give a shout out to Beep Beep Lettuce, which is the podcast that introduced me to neighbor science in general.
Really?
Also is the reason we're doing our own. Yeah, like they posted a meme that was a bunch of like left podcasts.
Oh,
and
nice.
Yours was on it. I'm like a big Murray Bookchin guy. So I was like, oh, I must listen to this. It's called Neighbor Science, and it's awesome. And that was also the meme that like on Facebook made us connect and be like, hey, we should do a podcast like on our end. So yeah, I mean, Beep Beep is the quiet like kingmaker of leftist podcasts out in the world. And I'm also going to plug them that people should listen to them because they rule.
That kicks ass. Cheech, do you have anything to plug?
How do I follow that? Let me just invent. Follow me on Twitter at Hermes Magi. Me and my co-host of Pastrami Hour, the defunct podcast that we haven't posted on in like 2 years. We've been talking about maybe bringing that back in some kind of way or different way. So yeah, follow me on Twitter and maybe I'll do something eventually.
Yeah, you should pick it back up and have me on, and we can all eat pastrami sandwiches.
Yes. Well,
hell yeah, King.
We're going to change the name in a very clever way. Yeah, be excited. Now I have to do this. Great. Damn it. You tricked me.
Okay. I don't really have anything to plug. The live stream was last Saturday, so everyone missed it, except for Cheech, actually.
Yee! I was there the whole time. I was so stoked. That was the one time I've been able to watch a live stream. I always miss them.
When is this episode going out?
I'm gonna try and get it done before the end of the weekend.
Okay. In that case, can I also make a quick plug?
Yeah.
If you like live streams, the Kino Discord does every 2 weeks a live stream where everyone watches along a movie. The last two have been Uncut Gems and Parasite. This episode will already have been out. Will be out after Color Out of Space. But if you like, watching movies with your friends, definitely check that out if you get the chance. The Kino Discord. It's in all of our show notes, and it's like a every 2 week thing.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I want to check that out. I'm bad at watching movies. I still haven't seen Parasite. I really want to, especially after this.
It's
now.
good.
Now I can do subtitles, apparently.
Yeah, it's a great movie. Okay, so check out the other Mecha Madness episodes. We had one with Alexander Edward from Minion Death Cult about the Big O, which is a great Art Deco style giant robot anime about Batman, but with mecha. We have the Evangelion episode, which took me 2 tries to make and took 6 watch throughs of the series to do all the research and analysis for, and the Gundam episode, which is talks about basically the king of mecha anime. All those turned out really well, I think, and we will be continuing with Mecha Madness probably until the end of the month. And yeah, we'll hopefully be doing a Gunbuster episode with Cheech and Abdul. So look forward to that. And we will be back next week with our regular episodes. All right, thanks for listening. Bye.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
Yeah, thanks for coming
Bye.
on. God, I'm being so rude.
Thank you
All
for
right.
having me, too.
I thank both of you for being on here, and I'm going to stop the recording now.